that's better. I'm Devin Williams, and this is In Spite Of. From the noise of I-244 to the quiet of an abandoned street and stairs that lead to nowhere. Neighborhoods north of Tulsa's downtown have gone through some radical changes. This is Standpipe Hill. It used to help supply water to Tulsa in the early 20th century. It was also the dividing line between a prosperous white community in the west and a prosperous black community in the east. In spite of good intentions, Crystal Patrick tells us how they both disappeared.
You might know that the 1921 race massacre destroyed Black Wall Street and the surrounding neighborhood. But did you know that just 2 decades later, the area boasted over 200 Black-owned businesses as courageous families and entrepreneurs rebuilt their beloved Greenwood? And to the west, the near North Side neighborhood offered cozy craftsmen and four-square houses with family-owned businesses and local schools in easy walking distance. And then came the Housing Act of 1954 and a new phrase called urban renewal. The writer, James Baldwin, liked to call urban renewal Negro removal, and the ideas of urban renewal would have devastating consequences for Greenwood and the near North Side. To learn more, I spoke with the director of the Urban Design Studio at OU, Shawn Crawford, and Dr. Saisha Dennis, who looks at the health outcomes of urban planning.
Environmental health is a huge thing, right? So if you're next to factories or lots of noise pollution, all those things impact the chronic diseases that a person may be at risk for. So asthma is a huge thing that is related to environmental health, right? And so especially in some of our urbanized our cities, urban cities, you have more people who have asthma, and a lot of that has to do with the amount of pollution that's in the air. And then being next to a factory that's producing a lot of pollution that may impact the water, or things like that. I mean, we see with Flint how Flint's water supply was essentially polluted enough that caused a lot of health effects for the population that lived there.
Well, I think urban renewal, it first started after World War II with the Housing Act of 1949. The country was changing rapidly after the war. There was a lot of suburbanization beginning. There were a lot of new planning ideas that came from Europe that were being implemented at that time, modifying the city for better transportation and addressing blighted areas in the downtown areas and providing more housing. At least that was ostensibly what the purpose of it was. Where did it go wrong? I think it went wrong in many ways. I mean, the first thing about urban renewal is that it was often much easier to remove things than to build them back. So you could go in and take out 100 housing units, but then it wasn't likely that you would get 100 housing units back. Or if you did, they'd be in a different form. It wasn't really an organic neighborhood anymore. It was a housing complex or a housing project. I think it was used, to remove blighted populations, in some cases to make room for economic development opportunities. And the neighborhoods weren't actually even blighted to begin with, right? But they would use that as a term of art to justify it. It was also used as part of the interstate highway expansion program. So they would vacate property to make room for the highways.
When you think about planning and how cities are planned or not planned, right, you can really think about how are they designed for the health of the people who are going to live there. So thinking about the amount of green spaces, walkable areas, the number of sidewalks in the community, where are businesses located, where are schools located, the public transportation that is available to the population that lives in the community. All those things that go into design actually influence and impact the ability of the people who live in those communities?
Yeah, well, I wasn't around, so I can't give you the specific information, right? But it's a part of the interstate highway system and program. So it would involve officials from the federal government, the state government, and the local government. They would all be involved. Probably most of the funding came from the federal highway program. They are thinking about the big system, like how does this highway connect Tulsa to all of the other communities and states in the country. And then, it just works its way down. The state, Oklahoma Department of Transportation is more interested in the state highway system and connecting things at the state level. And then the local officials would be interested in, how it's going to serve the city. And our city, like many cities, they used a loop concept. And our interdispersal loop is one of the tightest loops. It's like a noose around the city. And it's very disruptive to really all of the neighborhoods around the downtown area, but particularly to the north side, because on the north side it's elevated as opposed to like on the south end of the interdispersal loop, it's constructed below grade. And I'm sure a lot of those decisions were made by engineers who were not taking into account any sort of social or cultural, aspects, when they're designing it. They're maybe more concerned with drainage and getting the shortest route.
They're looking for populations that can, come to them with insurance and to help to pay for the services that they're offering. And so that may oftentimes hospitals are looking to go to locations where there's a lot of people, and then there are a lot of people with insurance, right? And so sometimes that can drive where you can find more clinics, more hospitals, the emergency rooms. Obviously, all hospitals have a community benefit, a community service, and so many of our hospitals are located close to downtown, near downtown. A lot of that may have been driven by early decisions where people live, and as people move more south, the hospitals move more south, the clinics move more south, because that's where a lot of people started to go, and that drives where those services are offered. The Urban Renewal Authority was probably the body that acquired the land to bring the highway through. And many of these interstate highways cut through the poorest neighborhoods, the minority neighborhoods. I don't think the program was purposely set up to do that. I think it was often a convenience for the decision makers. Oh, we've got a blighted area. We can get rid of it if we put the highway through there. Also, we can get the land there. It's cheaper, and those people won't oppose us as much. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of different elements that go into that. And Tulsa is not really unique in that regard, right? But I would say that we're sort of like a really good case study, right? If you want to study what happened. I like this quote, health disparities is a reflection of who is valued and who isn't, right? And so even though some of these things weren't intentionally, done, where was the value placed on getting input from the communities that putting a highway in the middle of this community would impact? What was the value placed on knowing that there are higher proportions of chronic disease among some populations, but they don't have insurance, so we'll put, so there's still going to be more clinics on certain parts of town. And so, in a society that doesn't place value on certain groups of people as equal to other groups of people, you'll see these type of disparities.
Greenwood, after the race massacre, it was largely rebuilt. And this was despite the fact that, they were unable to realize any insurance claims. The city of Tulsa tried to block reconstruction by changing the building code to make it much more difficult to build there. But nonetheless, the community was resilient and it built back. And that, was really a thriving community all the way into the 1950s. I think that the process should be driven by the people in the community. I like a placemaking approach where we can, right? Where the people are directly engaged in the process and in the making. Daniel Burnham, who did the plan for the city of Chicago about 100 years ago, right, or more, he's always quoted as saying, "Make no small plans," right? And I think I would just turn it completely on its head, right? These big, large, grand plans, right? They cannot anticipate what people need at the neighborhood level, at the personal level. Now, some things like, transportation planning or sewer planning, like, I was just talking about, you still have to see with the whole system, right? But, I think, the planners should be facilitators for the process. And they should also be advocates for the people that are facing inequities. And I think there's this, sort of, especially compared to urban renewal days, the profession is definitely moving that way. And another thing, the fact that both of us are here, is urban planning really started out as being part of public health, and then it kind of diverged, but now it's coming back together, and that's a good thing.
What are some of your favorite businesses or neighborhoods that are no longer in Tulsa? What former communities would you love to see restored to their former glory? Let us know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification button so you don't miss a single episode. I've been Devin. Tulsa will always be home, and we'll see you very soon.